Hi, I'm Tor, this is my channel and I like to do little chats about interesting topics and educate people a little, so here we go. I thought it would be fun to do a little chat on gender ideology. It's been battered around in the press for 10-15 years now. Very, very unfortunately, with most people commenting on it having absolutely no idea of what it is. So let's have a chat about what gender ideology is. Now, gender ideology, it doesn't refer to transgender people. It refers to socially shared beliefs and expectations about gender and gender roles. These are beliefs that shape how women, individuals, and societies perceive and understand sex, if you like, behaviours, and gender. It influences behaviour, social structures, and cultural norms. It can be seen as a macro system, if you like, that will impact individual development and societal organisation. When people, gender critical people, talk about real women, fake women, what they're doing is creating a system whereby you can be challenged and forced to prove your womanhood or masculinity or malehood. This happened in the 50s. They started genetically testing women because there was a similar frenzy back then. And we also remember what happened around then, generally, globally, in terms of wars and things and what had just happened. It was stopped, this genetic sex testing, because it was devastating the lives of women. Up to 2 to 3 people out of every 100, because we don't really understand the full incidence of intersex conditions. They could very likely actually be genetically male and appear female. Conditions like androgen sensitivity can cause genetic males to look, act and feel entirely female and never know until there's an internal examination. You can even actually have a vagina and have those conditions, so you can look, functionally normal. You can be functionally normal, if you like, as a woman and not be. You can have up to 95% male DNA and be fertile as a woman and have children. We are looking at a situation where you can be yelled at in a toilet and forced to show paperwork to prove you're female if you're too tall, too attractive, too short, have short hair, and that people could be forcibly DNA tested. That could destroy the lives of up to 2 to 3 women out of every 100. That could be your toddler, your daughter, your aunt who's never had children, or maybe even who's had them. It could be anyone you know whose life could be utterly imploded. Gender ideologies are not individual opinions at all. They are widely shared blanket understandings about what it means to be a woman, a man, non-binary, whatever. There's a lot of confusion currently about what those terms mean, and claims this Supreme Court ruling in the UK has clarified it. It hasn't. It's basically just wordplay. It explains nothing about how you'd biologically explain who's male or female, simply stating assigned sex at birth. Well, I mean, you can't start accusing people like Emaine, as J.K. Rowling did, of being a man when the government's decided it's at birth. There's no consistency to any of this at all, and of course there can't be. Biology is not actually binary, and when you try and make it so, you force people out of those categories, and then they don't fit in any. They are rendered unpeople, fully under his eye Gilead style. Gender ideologies dictate how individuals are expected to behave, how gender roles are assigned, and how society is structured around those roles. That means things like access to abortion rights, contraception. This belief that hormones are bad, no, it definitely hasn't backfired in America and led to abortion drugs and all kinds of drugs that regulate fertility treatments and prevent pregnancy. It hasn't definitely not led to them being banned, except it has. Gender ideologies shape how individuals internalise and understand their gender, themselves as a woman, themselves as a man, influencing their self-perception and interactions with others. What that means is when you get a position where the government, where gender critical people are deciding what a woman is, and what they're deciding, by the way, is it's someone who has periods, breasts, gives birth, that influences how young women understand their own roles and gender. It reduces their expectations for themselves. It reduces their aims, their goals, how lofty they are. It mentally renders them incapable of picturing for themselves as a very realistic possibility. Anything grand, anything great. be it beating a man at sport, which apparently is impossible according to gender critical people because all women are weak. Be it becoming a doctor, well, I mean, no, what if they need to touch a man? Or a man becoming a doctor, well, no, what if he needs to touch a woman? Like, you can use it to rule anyone out of anything, and that is why far-right and fascist organisations love it. It is a form of social control. Gender ideologies vary across cultures and historical periods. That reflects the different social and cultural context. For instance, 2,000 odd years ago, around the time of the biblical Christ, things were fairly savage regarding women's rights. They were seen as purchasable. They could be married off against their will to make land deals. They had no choice in being married. They couldn't divorce. Ironically, when Islam is claimed to be against women's rights or misogynistic, and maybe by today's standards in the West it is, in reality, they granted women rights they didn't have until 1950 in the West, like divorce. It spread quickly and mainly through women, Islam, because it offered a much better deal than anything socially at the time. The ability to own property, run a business, keep your own money, an entitlement to part of your husband's income on request, to have your basic needs met. Various legal protections women had not had before. Well, arguably, I think at one period about 1,000 years before, that there was essentially a more equal society in existence. That unfortunately fell by the wayside. Islam essentially revived that. They were progressive, and that was the appeal. And part of the reason the Christian church is currently not appealing is because it's not progressive enough. And that's the irony. And this understanding of Islam as not progressive, it was very progressive when it came about. And a retrograde progress in terms of progression of rights is what is snuffing out a lot of organised religion because it's not appealing to people who want a decent life. Gender ideologies generally emphasise that gender is not solely determined by biology, but is also influenced by cultural norms and belief. However, the gender-critical gender ideology, far from being critical of gender, is determined to enforce cultural and religious norms and beliefs on women. Beliefs that men should be the primary breadwinner and women should be homemakers are gender ideology. The idea that men and women belong in different spheres of life, e.g. work, home, that is gender ideology. The belief that there are only two genders, women and men, often conflated wrongly with male and female, which are sexes, that is gender ideology. And the idea for some people that the brain's sex could differ from apparent physical sex is too much of a leap for them to make. Their level of understanding of biology is set around middle school, and that would be, before the graduating years of high school in the UK, just after, kinder. And, those beliefs, so those understandings of biology are very, very overly simplistic and inaccurate. The idea of a fluid gender identity, the belief that gender is not fixed, that's seen by the far right as absolutely outrageous. But it's completely true, and it is also true that female gender, women's gender, tends to be less fixed and more flexible. Probably because women are just more adaptable. Testosterone can create a certain rigidity in thinking. One of the downsides of testosterone, I guess. Gender ideology contributes to social inequality and discrimination based on gender. The idea of the patriarchy is a gender ideology. The idea that women shouldn't do certain jobs or should only be nurses or only care for children and men shouldn't do it, that is discrimination both against men and women based on gender ideology. Studying gender ideology can help challenge and transform traditional gender roles and norms, and that is something that's sorely needed. Studying, not challenging, not damning, and not pretending we don't believe in them because the far right are paying us to do so. What's that? Those letters in the alphabet? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. Anyway, understanding gender ideology is crucial for creating a more just and equitable society. And I strongly suggest you all do so. Understand what a gender ideology is. Do not believe the red herring when someone uses that as a dog whistle that they don't have one themselves. Unless you are literally agender and you want to create an agender world and you're slightly crazy, it is impossible to avoid gender ideology. It is impossible to pretend it doesn't exist, and pretending that it only applies to one group and it's an evil thing, when in fact it's a necessary area of study for the advancement of rights of men, women, girls and boys. It's harmful, it's really harmful, and the reason the far right seek to snuff it out is because it advances their causes generally, and most of their cause is control of women particularly. They are obsessed with low birth rates, and yeah, that is a problem, not one that's fixable unfortunately, I think, but a problem, especially for the white people who believe it's good if there are lots of white people and bad if there are people of other colours for some reason. I mean, they're all people, eh? Very, very odd beliefs. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my little podcast primer on gender ideology. I hope you understand better what it is now. And I hope you go off and learn about gender ideology and the way it affects you. Be it the misogyny you're faced with daily as a woman, or the way you're treated as an ATM by that hysterical whoever you dated years ago as a man, because that misandry is additionally a gender ideology, and an unfair one which impacts men's ability to form relationships and makes them feel unwanted and unloved and not needed emotionally, which is corrosive, damages their ability to parent, damages their ability to form relationships. And no, I'm not simping for men. You cannot expect to live in a safe world as a woman and ignore the needs of half the population. And I don't mean kowtow to those needs. I mean genuinely understand them. Understand that people have them. That is all. That's what makes us all safer. Understanding, learning, acting on what we learn, and seeking to address inequity and how criminal law is enforced. See, it's impossible to be feminist and not believe in gender ideology. Without gender ideology, there is no requirement for feminism, and that is why the far right hate gender ideology and want to snuff it out as a field of study. And they definitely want that to happen. They don't want us thinking about this one. Up women's rights, up feminism, keep fighting.